Hey everybody, this is Brittany from Agile KDX, and I'm so happy you're joining us on our YouTube channel. Tonight we're going to be talking to Kat. She's a local Portland consultant with Slalom, and we're so happy to have her here. Kat, why don't you tell me about what we're going to talk about tonight?
Tonight, the topic is bullies, fakes, and imposters, and we're going to figure out a way to turn down the negative voices that you hear on your Agile journey and find that thought leader inside of you to help you and other people in your community find the positive side of your Agile journey.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear about it. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
So, tonight we're going to talk about fakes and bullies and imposters, those devious villains. Has anyone here dealt with an Agile bully? Could you raise your hand if you've ever dealt with an Agile bully? How does that make you feel? What does that look like? Can somebody give me an example of when they felt like they were being bullied by someone in an Agile context?
Not safe.
Not safe. Were they intentionally trying to bully you, you think?
I think it's in their personality, yeah. So I think,
So your person was evil. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to share, well, first of all, this is my big head. And I tried to make it a really light slide, just so you know a little bit about me. I came from a global organizational change, and then from there into Agile, rather than, I just like to preface with, I did not work up from Agile teams into Agile organizational change, which gives me a different set of qualifications, and I try to be humble about the people who worked in different areas than I did. Eventually, I went into team coaching, but I didn't spend as much time in teams as some people may have. But I did multiple language, multiple countries, multiple time zones for large company transformations, and then started applying Agile to that when I got hired by an Agile company. When I got hired by an Agile company, it was a certified Scrum Alliance and scaled Agile training provider who did both of those things, but he also did scaled and general Agile transformations on the side. I spent a few years doing that. And I'm really passionate about business agility. So if anybody wants to ever talk about that, please let me know. And studied a lot about neurological training methods, which we won't talk about tonight, but I'd love to talk about that too, or show up at Lean Coffee, whatever. So enough about me in my head. Has anyone here ever heard of Shuhari? What's Shuhari?
when you do something until it becomes part of you. So do something by action, and then you finally get sort of become fun meaning behind it.
So you do something, and then you take an action, and then you get to the underlying meaning?
Right.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Shuhari? I like to think of Shuhari as getting your driver's license. So you study the book, but you're not driving. Then you try to drive, and someone's with you and teaching you. And then you break the rules, and you crash your parents' car, and they don't let you go out for a long time. Or you start to not think about driving at some point, right? You're not holding the manual or looking it up every time you get in the car. It's just a habit, like wearing a watch. Most of the time you're wearing a watch, you're not thinking about wearing a watch. So I'm going to try and share a Shuhari that I have all of the time. I've had it once in a big way, and ever since then, I try to remember that Shuhari and hopefully share it with you so that when you're in situations that are similar, you may have some of that same aha, and maybe you can gain something from it or share it with me, and we both learn together. Sound good? So the first thing we're going to talk about is what's a bully, what's a fake, and what's an imposter. So I'm going to tell a story about a bully. So when I worked for that Agile trainer, I was at Liberty Mutual, and Liberty Mutual said, "We're going Agile." Some of you may have heard this. You guys were being forced to think for yourselves, which makes no sense at all, does it? And then I said, "Great, can I have training?" They said, "No, not yet. Not yet, not yet, not yet." And I thought, I'm the newest person on this PMO team. I should probably go get some training, or at least show that I'm interested in doing it. So I took the training with this guy, And I came back to Liberty Mutual and I said, hey, we have this standing meeting. And we always end up leaving early because we're just checking in. We have a full hour in case we need it, but we never go that long. If on days we aren't using that full hour, could I offer to share one thing I've learned? And the lady said, and my boss said, no, because we don't know if we're going to do Agile that way. We don't want you to share anything. And I thought, I'm so mad. Has anybody ever had this great idea and you want to take it to your team and somebody just stomped on your heart when you tried to share it and thought, we don't need your great ideas. You have not earned the right to have a good idea, and good ideas can only come from people with authority. Has anybody ever experienced that? So the trainer was the president of Agile Indy. And I thought, I'm going to dive in with both feet. I like to get involved. I like to volunteer. So I said, what can I do? And he said, we are trying to put on what is the largest non-national Agile conference in the country. We need some help. So I drove their 2017 conference with 800 people in it, had the contract signed, found all the vendors, got all the people involved making decisions, and that allowed me to do a lot of networking. And while that was happening, he said, hey, would you like to come and work for me? I know that Liberty's laying off a lot. You might be able to bring me students. Maybe you could help me bring transformations along. I said, sure. So I thought, this is awesome. I'm finally going to get all this recognition and be able to use my ideas. And he was super controlling about anything I said, anything I did, and it was even worse. I wasn't allowed to have any ideas. At one point, he was actually proofreading my emails before I could send them out. And I thought, oh, you big bully. Then he said, I was helping with the calendar, and he said, I'm going to a coaching circle in Chicago. And I thought, I want to go to that. He said, I'm sorry, you're not qualified. This is for experienced coaches. And I'm thinking, for a couple of years, we've done all these different transformation canvases and all this stuff. How am I going to learn if I don't get a chance? So, because I'm the youngest, which means I don't follow rules, I signed up for the coaching circle under my maiden name, using a different email address. His brother was hosting the coaching circle. His brother was listed on the website as an employee so his company would look bigger. His brother had never met me, never come to our office. His wife was listed there too because she had been laid off. And every now and then she did some Google ads, and he wanted to make it look like he had a bigger company because it was harder to get these big bids when you have a very slim team. So he was so mad I showed up. This was an open space. Who went to the open space here a couple weeks ago? Would someone share for the rest of us what an open space is?
The open space it's like an unconference. You show up and it's what you talk about. The sessions are all on demand. Everyone creates the conference every single day. You talk about what's interesting to you. The people that come to the sessions want to discuss what you want to discuss. So it's built by you, for you, and it's just an active participation by everyone.
So that's what this was, but not just Agile, specific to Agile coaching. So he gets up in front, and the way you do this is you write out a topic, right? And you go up to the group and you say, I'd like to talk about this topic in this space at this time. And his topic was how to spot an Agile fake. And who do you think that might have been aimed at? So I went, and I listened, and I argued, and I contradicted him and made him look stupid a couple times, and I thought, ha, 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 I got you, you big bully. Didn't really make me feel better. Another story I have is when I came here to Portland, my mom had, what is it called, carpal tunnel surgery more than once. She actually got locked in a bathroom. She couldn't open the doorknob. So I put this oil sometimes on my hands, which smells very similar to feet. So they put some kind of patchouli scent over it so that it doesn't smell like feet on your hands, which then it smells really nice. But I had someone send me, and if I had printed it out, what would be about a 3-page email about why you should not wear perfume in Portland without any, inquiring as to why I smelled like flower feet or whatever it was. So this was another example of that to me, and I wrote back, and this person was an Agile coach. And I said, oh, Thank you for the unsolicited advice. My advice is to not give unsolicited advice. And I thought, oh, again, I gotcha. I'm winning, but it didn't make me feel better. Can I get anyone to help me define what bullying is?
Putting down one to elevate another, to elevate yourself.
Putting someone down to elevate yourself. We had half of us at least said that we've experienced bullying. We don't have to get the right answer. What is the answer from that situation for you? Intimidation.
It seems like it's where there's an unfair power.
A power play. Yeah. Yuck. That's so ugly. Taking space. I have not heard that, and I really like that. Thank you.
Creating an environment where someone doesn't feel safe.
Creating a not safe environment. Absolutely. You don't even have to actually talk to somebody to bully them, do you?
Criticizing someone in front of everybody else.
Humiliation. That's a fun one. Builds lots of friends. What else? Anything else? So I'm going to...
I think that bullies are basically cowards. So they have very cowardly behavior.
They're cowards. So let me capture some of these. These are good. What was the one? Holding the space. Cowards. Unsafe environment. What were some of the other ones? These are great. Judgment. I've been with a keyboard long enough that my handwriting is illegible. So sorry, I hope you're taking notes, or I'll talk louder into the microphone so that you can clearly capture that. Anything else? Exclusion. Patronizing. They're so painful. Great. Shaming. Anybody here ever heard of Brene Brown? I put the E on there, and I don't want to cross it off and look like I didn't do that on purpose, so. I'm going to offer one definition that I have found. When my daughters were in middle school, and they're like super old now, and I'm not going to tell you how old because that would make me seem older. They came up with all this federal funding and said, you get more money for your schools if you have a bullying program. And so I was on the school board vision committee because I'm overly involved. It's kind of an addiction for me. And this was the definition of the bullying program, and they trained it to the kids often so that it wouldn't be an unfamiliar exercise to step in and defend someone, which was actually a really great program. But they needed to first define what it was. It's not every conflict you need to stick your nose in, which is something you really need to train the distinction of when you're talking about 3rd and 4th graders. But if the behavior is unwanted, so my daughter once got called out for bullying for poking a boy in the hallway. And he liked her, he was poking her too. So it wasn't quite unwanted. So they wrote it off. Repeated, it has to happen more than once. And I believe you talked too about it intended to establish power or domination. So it's a decent, I think ours is super valid too, but this is also a decent way of identifying not only what is bullying, but what's not. Because some of these things could be negative behaviors, but you could see them in non-bullying situations as well. But I think this is one decent definition, just so that we have a conversational starting point. I have these thinking bubbles up here. Did any of you notice them before we started the talk? So if you read the description of the talk today, I'm Kat Daugherty. These bubbles are coming from Kathy Higgins. My mom is Filipino, and she can't pronounce TH, so I don't know why she named me Kathy. So when I hear Katty, it's usually because something is wrong. So when I picture my imposter inside my head, it's the Kathy that just ate the Hostess Ho-Hos and didn't leave any for her brother, or didn't come home before the streetlights came on, or whatever. So I'm going to share some of my inner thoughts that I was going through, even as I was making the presentation, thinking, what might I be worried about that I might come across? This is not easy to do. I think, though, the more we start talking about the fact that we all have an inner voice, the more we can recognize that it's okay to have an inner voice, and it's just something that you need to manage and work through, right? So I know in that first part, especially when I'm talking about my little acts of controlled vengeance, it sounds like I'm just complaining. And I worked with an awesome guy at my office who said, you know, you want to make sure that you're not coming across like I get to have the pulpit to talk about how bad these people were and how great I was. Let's talk about fakes. It's the cutest fake picture I could find. So you guys all talked about bullying incidents that you've experienced. Pretend that you are this 5'6" Filipino slim woman you see before you at that coaching circle when your boss is putting on a talk. I worked for him at the time. Was putting on a talk about fakes and making eye contact with you the entire time. I felt this tall. I felt like the biggest imposter ever. I was doing everything I could to learn. I was doing everything I could to support the community, to contribute everything I had. I was working all of the time. I was in training sessions everywhere. I'd brought all this expertise from my last job. It just wasn't specific to this particular angle of looking at organizational change, but it was a whole lot of related material for sure. And I was being demeaned, and I felt like nothing. And when I got a 3-page email about how out of touch I am with Portland because I have a hand oil on and I had just moved here, I felt like nothing. Has anyone ever felt this way? Felt like a fake when you're doing your best? It's hard to recover, right? It's hard to pick back up. Am I talking too fast? Does it sound like it's calculated that I'm talking really slowly? Because if you've ever had a conversation with me, this is not how I talk at all. I'm usually more like 80 miles an hour. So just know that I'm doing that SSS, CCC. I'm really trying to speak slowly so that I can manage my imposter syndrome of, am I talking too fast? So just maybe, this one's harder. I don't know that I want to do a show of hands, but if you're willing to do it, great. These are different types of imposter syndrome, and there's an infinite number. These are the ones that I've seen, and when I tried researching this topic, by the way, that coaching circle was a few years ago, and I fell so in love with the next topic. After my boss did his talk on fakes, another woman I'd never met from Ann Arbor, Michigan stood up, and she did a talk on imposter syndrome and how calling yourself an expert was another way of bullying, making people feel like fakes, and also saying, I have nothing else to learn, which means working with a beginner may be better in an agile world than working with an expert. And I thought, I don't want to work for him. He has a lot of great qualities and he's taught me a lot, but I want to be on that side of the hill. And so I moved on. And I met with her a few times, and I did some other coaching circles with her, and she shared some information with me that I hope you find valuable. So what's a perfectionist? These are some examples of what you might experience as a perfectionist. How could a perfectionist be an imposter? Doesn't that mean that you're really working hard and trying to make everything as best as it could be? Who feels like they're a perfectionist is willing to share? Thank you for doing that. These are difficult conversations. How do you know that you're a perfectionist?
Well, I mean, like you said, never
Right. Right. Do you find it easy to ask for help?
I do now.
Now?
We can't hear you on the other side.
Right. Right. Does anyone else see anything in here that resonates with you? Yeah. I think the biggest one for me is natural born genius. If you read up on this, I took, in school I was in a lot of advanced placement classes, and you think that that makes you super confident, you would think, and in one way it did. On the other hand, if I didn't get into a high school or a high class, the shame that that brought me, because it was outside of the identity that had been imposed on me, was pretty heavy. And I carry a lot of that. I didn't go to a fantastic, a good college, a pretty good college, but I didn't go to a Harvard or a Stanford. Is there anyone here who feels guilty when they're not working and other people are? Yeah? Do you feel like they're better than me at what they do because they're harder workers?
No, I just feel like I'm not contributing enough. You know, it's like other people are working for their stuff to be done. So if you're not working, then you're not contributing. You're not contributing, you know, you're not.
And in some situations that's okay to do, right? But in some cases, if that's your driver, it can be a problem, right? How do you guys feel if somebody calls you an expert? Somebody who considers themselves a newbie calls you an expert. If I had us line up in this room, I've started doing this when I do training. Line up over here if you know a whole lot about Agile. Line up over here if you're a beginner and you just learned how to spell Agile. If you've been doing it a little while, come in the middle. And I always pick the largest area of the room for the beginner side. It doesn't matter if it's executives. Everyone puts themselves in the beginner role. So I like to call myself a perpetual beginner, mostly because then you can't expect anything from me, right? But the mindset is, I will always have something to learn. I will always have somewhere to grow. Okay, here's the tough part. Find my Zen. So after I had identified all these bullies out there, those villains, those bad guys, and realized I'm not going to be one of them, I'm going to be one of the people that help people find their inner imposter syndrome and help them put on talks if they want to, or help them achieve their goals in whatever way I can. Time after time after time, I caught my reflection. The person who showed up at Liberty, who was saying, I have a great idea, I want to share it. Was I being empathetic of my boss? And the fear she probably had, knowing that her entire team was about to transition and she had no idea who was staying and who wasn't? The person who had told me that I shouldn't wear perfume. Did I make an assumption about what their motivation was? That maybe they were trying to help me fit in. The boss, who didn't trust me to do things, I assumed was devious. He didn't want to compete with me. He didn't want me to do anything. Maybe he was looking for the right opportunity to help me grow so that I could do those things. I think there was a little vindictiveness in the fake talk, but that's okay. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I ran up what we call the ladder of inference. Has anyone ever heard of the ladder of inference? What's that? No? Anyone? The ladder of inference, we start on the bottom. I take in some data. I observe something. I hear something. I read something. Then I take a step up. I can choose to react to only this set of data. I don't need more data. I'm not going to get any more data before I form an inference. So I select some data from the pool that I could have access to, and I make a judgment based on that data. And maybe there's other steps, but eventually I take an action based on this set of data. Now, how many of us have ever run up that ladder too quickly? And it cost us. You're all bullies. That's the aha for today. I hope. You are both the victim of bullying when someone is coming to you excited with an idea that is not yours, and you see it as them not welcoming your views. And you are the bully when you are sharing your ideas and not looking for theirs. Right? We're all fakes. We're all imposters. And we're all bullies. It's great, but what do we do about that? Tell me, Kat, what do we do about that? Let's envision our imposter syndromes. I told you mine. It's Kathy. She has pigtails. She has this weird, like, rainbow 80s sweater on. She's riding a banana seat bike. I have to put her away sometimes. I have to put that feeling of being shamed away and say, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to focus on my strengths. I'm going to look at what I can do for other people. So envision your imposter. The person who did that talk, the imposter talk, literally, she gave hers a name and she pictured the face of this and so that she could literally ask them politely to leave. I don't need you right now. I'm not mourning and I'm not grieving. I'm focusing on being productive. I'll call you when I need you. And told them to leave. And sometimes she said, get the hell out. Like, you got to go, right? So first of all, we have to hit reset on our own pain, our own shame, and whatever is driving us to be defensive when we hit people that we are perceiving are bullying us. Sometimes it is intentional. Most of the time, it probably isn't. Most of the time, it's someone who's super excited and just didn't think about how you were experiencing the exchange. In my mind, empathy is the answer to everything. It's super hard. It's one word. It's super hard to keep in focus. Had I empathized with the person giving me the advice about the perfume, I might not have experienced that pain. Had I empathized with my boss about struggling to run his own business that was very, very small when he could not afford a large number of employees, and I'm sure he probably didn't hire someone he wanted to let go after a short amount of time. He wasn't getting the business development that he wanted. And then she showed up and had all these great ideas which made him look bad, which shouldn't fire me, not fire me, but not develop me. So when all else fails, that's our keyword, right? Kind of keeping that in focus. So let's talk about this in the context of Agile. What's the first line of the Agile Manifesto? Ah, you can have a t-shirt for this.
Oh.
There's a line before that. Actually, there's two lines before that. No, it's not a value. Before the values, there's another line.
It's about we're seeking better ways to develop software, something like that.
Oops. I might go back to that one.
Uncovering better ways.
We're uncovering ways, better ways of developing software by helping others do it. So let's look for the servant leadership pieces within our manifesto and principles. Having worked for a trainer, when you think you're buying Agile training, no matter where it is, it always ends up kind of Scrum and Kanban training, or maybe SAFe training. But we skip over the servant leadership part of Agile. It is all of Agile. It's lean servant leadership, right? Does anybody want a shirt? Like, okay, so now who can give me one of the next ones? Or what is the next one? It is in a value. The first value. First Agile value.
Individuals and interactions and process tools.
There we go. Thank you. Here's another one. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I hear people in there. I hear some servant leadership in there. So there's a definition to Agile. I can send you to a website. There's some definitions for bullying, but what's the definition of servant leadership? Anyone? Leading by example? Is there an official definition? So there's no wrong definition. So I thought about how do we define this so that we're all talking about the same thing. I think, let me know what you think, that servant leadership is defined by what we as a community mean when we say it. What's servant leadership to you guys? You said putting your... Leading by example. Helping others succeed. Okay.
Under that category, removing blockers.
Anything else?
Places that need to be removed for that as a leader.
Group needs over the leader.
Setting aside your own ego and agenda for the good of the team.
Good of the team over your ego. It's not about you. I like that one. I'll put an exclamation mark on it. Anything else? Ooh, distributing power. So if there's only 2 of us, and I'm trying to practice servant leadership, how am I distributing power? Does it necessarily have to be in a group? How could that look if there were only 2 of us? Great. Thank you. So let's try and apply some of these to our Agile principles. Thank you guys for sharing. So we talked about customer collaboration. Working together daily. How could that help facilitate servant leadership?
Find out what people need.
You find out their needs. Have you ever tried to work on something, you go away and you just want to be left alone and you just want to do it by yourself, you don't want any input, you don't want to collaborate, you just need to get the thing done. But somebody else really wants to learn, or maybe it's impacting their work, or you don't even know if they have a need or not because you didn't ask. So it can, not in all situations, but it can. Motivated individuals. So I like to look at invitation. Invitation is undervalued. Have you ever had someone who was hired to help you and nobody asked you if you wanted any help or needed any help? Or have you ever been hired to help somebody and nobody asked them if they wanted any help or needed any help? These are awful positions to be in. Both sides are pretty awful, right? Then it makes servant leadership a little more challenging simply because there, in my mind, is a huge value, an innate value to invitation to leadership rather than imposed leadership. But you can still make an attempt, move the needle. Face-to-face conversation. Why would that be helpful in servant leadership? Although, I mean, come on, can I do just as much servant leadership just by sending you an email and telling you, do you want my help? Or a text? Doesn't that come off just the same way as if I stop by your desk or form a relationship with you or ask how you're doing, right? Face to face. And I think that makes it much more challenging in those virtual teams. Be welcoming. Why would my imposter syndrome tell me to be welcoming? You guys might not have thought of it in this term, which is why I'm stopping at this one. But you might have had this self-doubt as well. Have you ever worried that when you are trying to ask a genuine question, you may subconsciously be asking a leading question? And therefore, even asking a question isn't sufficient to making sure you're being a good servant leader, making sure you're supporting someone else's attempted innovation, right? You have to actually genuinely be welcoming. to that person's ideas and their worth that those ideas come from. That's challenging. I think that's pretty challenging, especially we get busy. We get really busy and it's tempting to lead. Self-organizing teams. How would that be servant leadership? More pointedly, how is it not command and control? It's freedom. It's liberation, right? Trust that they can get something done. This one, some people might not look at as a form of servant leadership, but retrospectives are huge. In my mind, they're one of the biggest values of Agile. If you take that away, you're just trying some new thing the new way, and it's going to eventually veer off and be just as bad as whatever you tried before. But if you're self-correcting, if you create a feedback loop that allows people to voice what they want, that's inherently servant leadership, right? And then genuinely listening with eye contact and caring about that person as an individual. So some of you read the title and thought, I'm going to figure out how to be a thought leader, right? Good, let's do that. What's a thought leader? Someone who shares.
Yeah, they share what they know with other people.
Are you a thought leader? Well, you just shared something, right? Any other definitions? I'm not saying you're not or you are. I'm just asking a question. What was yours? Did you have one?
Someone who knows how to ask great questions.
Ooh, good questions. I like that. I don't think there's another definition of thought leader either. I think it's kind of what the community thinks of when we say thought leader. I have started to think of thought leaders as someone who learned something, someone who tried something, and shared the results of their experiment. Is that one fair definition? So please stand up if recently you have learned something. Now, please sit down if you did not experiment with anything you've learned recently. Oh. Now, if you didn't tell anyone about that, please sit down. Or anything that you learned. This is a lot of thought leaders. You are a lot of thought leaders. Congratulations. Thank you for standing. I'm going to point to an expert in this room. And I think it's you. And you. And you. Definitely you. Yeah. I guarantee if we sat down for coffee, if you sat down with him, she sat down with her, she sat down with him, you would find one topic that she knows more about than any of us, that she knows more about than any of us, that he knows more about than any of us. And in that one dimension, he's an expert, and I'm not. I don't care how long I've been in Agile. You're an expert, and I'm not. I don't know if you knew this was an Agile meeting. If we approach everyone, whether they call themselves experts or beginners, as if they are experts, we only have things to gain, right? Because collaboratively we can realize a lot more and learn a lot more than we can ever do individually. So it becomes more about community knowledge and sharing. So how can you be a thought leader? Think of something you've learned. Try to do something with it. And even if you fail, share what you learned from that experiment. Share what happened. It's about you guys. It's not about me. So let's talk about you. That was what the chair was for. It's for standing up. Personal branding. So I have taken this experiment and tried to figure out some ways that I could develop my thought leadership by sharing things. And I've had some successes, some failures. One day I had this crazy success. So right now I think I have 2,500 followers. About 13 months ago I had 400. I had one post go insanely viral. And then so I've kind of figured out some patterns that make posts go viral. Here's another weird thing. Less than half of the people following me are not connections. They're connections of connections or connections of connections of connections, which is interesting. And I think that that actually creates a pulpit for me to gather information and then share it back. And that helps the people who are following me as well. So it becomes somewhat circular. I get to read more interesting things because I'm seeing or commenting on. And people come to me asking for questions. I don't even have to have the answer. Sometimes I just repost a question. In fact, my viral post was just a question. There wasn't any information at all. Oh, what do you guys think? I think it's cutting out just a little bit, maybe. So, do I have your permission to share some of the things that I did that make people call me a thought leader, which then I remind them that I'm a beginner. But there is that perception sometimes, and it's valuable. So if it's valuable to you, I'd like to share. Do I have your permission to share some of those things? Great. Does it feel good to have someone ask your permission before they're telling you what you should do? Good. Well, you should watch this slide. Look at, did we talk about their ideas? Yeah, I think we talked about their ideas. Good. Okay. Let's talk about, what have you guys done to share some of your thoughts? To share some of your ideas? Does anyone else here post on LinkedIn? Or comment on other things? Work in offices where there are talks that you could attend and have conversations with other people? Or create connections? Does anyone here mentor anybody? Does anyone mentor you? Has anyone ever heard of a champion? This is an interesting concept. I had someone post that I was their champion, and I went, thank you. What is that? Is that bad? She said a champion is a person who doesn't just tell you what you need or give you advice, but finds something to challenge you. Gives you an opportunity that will challenge you. And if I set the bar here, Kat, you tell me I should do this. She's like, I think I should write a paper, and you're like, why don't you submit to the national conference? Okay, so we're going to try something really quick. This is me being a thought leader. If you have your phone, and you have the LinkedIn app, could you pull it out? And if you go to contacts, in the middle of the top of the screen, what does that even say? My God, I need glasses. Find nearby. Pop that on, and you can connect with me, because I just turned my Find Nearby on. And you can connect with anybody else in this room who wants to learn about Agile, and we can create a community of people. Not that we don't have a community, but it's still good to have the connections. You'll see what they post. They'll see what you post. Post something about that crazy Filipino lady. Do you have your LinkedIn app? If you go to contacts, and then there's a little round thing in the center that says Find Nearby. Look at that. There's all you guys. So you should be able to connect with these people, with anyone that you're not already connected to. So you can do that when you're networking. That's one thing you can do. It's quick. It's handy. When you forget your business cards, you don't forget your phone. Nobody forgets their phone, right? Public speaking. Is anyone here interested in public speaking?
I was at Agile Open Northwest a couple weeks ago, and a colleague of mine was presenting, and he was trying to present and write on the board at the same time. And so I helped him start writing on the board. And all I was doing was taking notes on what people were saying, but because I was standing in the front of the room, people perceived that I was an expert, and I was really just helping out. So that's an easy way to do it if you don't have confidence in your own knowledge, is just help someone else.
Yes. Let's all connect with Karen Healy, Healy, Ley, sorry. And John Spurlock, who helped me with the presentation. Thank you so much, John Spurlock. Like Spurlock Holmes, S-P-U-R-L. Don't tell them what my nickname is, John. Volunteering. I wrote this blog post once before I got tired of blog posts, which was after 3, because it was not fun. about how volunteering can land you a job. And it did, not only for me, but in the same year, it did for my daughter. First of all, it feels really good. Second of all, you're surrounded with people who have to have some similar values to you. And you're stuck in some situation where you're probably going to be talking to them. Not in every case, but enough. And then I just listed some different organizations that you could work with. This is when I lived in Indianapolis. But again, the thing that launched me into Agile in a way was volunteering to drive a conference. It really wasn't taking the class. It wasn't the actual qualification. It was the free and engaging and rewarding networking that came from volunteering. Thank you to our volunteers from Agile Portland tonight also for all this hard work you guys do. And then championing someone versus being a mentor. When you see something and you know someone might enjoy doing it, let them know. Put their name in the hat. Paying it forward totally pays off way better than asking for favors. Way better, 10 times. Side note, not really an Agile thing, but I just enjoy it and I would love for you guys to do it. I've started a trend that's called pay it forward by the dollar. It's like hashtag pay it forward by the dollar. So every time I go to the dollar store, no matter who gets behind me in line, and several times I've wanted to change my mind, I offer to pay for their stuff under the condition that they do 2 strangers a favor within 24 hours. One person cussed at me. One person cried and said, "Can I get one more roll of Christmas wrapping paper for my children?" One lady couldn't understand what I said at all, but then she added more stuff into her cart, so I think she actually did understand what I was saying. Anyway, I've had some seriously good experiences from it. More than once, people are so happy about it, they buy the cart of the person behind them, which means I just bought 4 world favors because they still have to give one, and that person still has 2, and they already got one. So if you ever have some extra money, now the downside is when you feel like you just don't kind of like the person behind you, you still have to do it. Because otherwise we're running up that ladder of inference. So, and how much does it really ever cost you? So yeah, I'd love to hear some other thought leadership ideas. What have you guys done that you're like, wow, that got me more recognition than I expected it to? Help someone?
So a boss or other coworkers like sending me emails after our meeting, like to thank me for putting together literally just a Word doc with some screenshots.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
We pass it around? Someone? Anybody else? When did you last feel appreciated? What did it look like? What is she getting at? Get on with it. Who's that comedian that always talks about the audience? He sounds like a voice for the audience members. He's an Irish guy. What is that guy's name? Gaffigan. Is he going to talk about bacon forever? I love that guy. I'm going to do that now.
So a few weeks ago, I got together with someone and had coffee to help him learn about networking and how he ought to go about looking for a job. And he sent me a message just a couple of days later, and he said, I talked with 4 people, and the 4th person I talked to led to my first real developer job. So,
well, high five! That had to feel good. Good for you. Tell me a story. When was the last time you felt appreciated? She's like, why did I sit in the front? You got one? Thank you for saving her.
I was planning to go to a meeting today that was to be about the challenges of getting a tech job and some of the tools and resources that someone had used, and I wasn't able to make it to the meeting, so I checked in with the instructor afterward to see if I could get the notes, and he said that it was kind of a networking colleague of mine who I didn't know was going to be making the presentation, and she specifically mentioned me in her presentation as a valuable example of having friends you can go to networking events with to make things a whole lot easier.
Wow, that's cool.
I was like, that's really exciting.
So that is actually a good pointer. So we're looking for pointers of things that you could do to develop your own thought leadership. Bring a friend. Bring a friend with you. Not only are you learning more, but you're helping them as well, right? Anyone? This side of the room? Give me a couple more, guys. Yeah, thank you.
I started a new job 5 months ago and I didn't know anything, and it's a huge company. I feel appreciated because I ask a lot of questions. And it seems like people who have been there for a long time are like, whoa, like this person is asking questions that some of us maybe would ask, or we would feel stupid because we've been here for so long and don't ask.
So you're probably helping a lot of them.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not my intention. It's more because I don't know anything. But I feel appreciated for that.
Good,
Yeah.
good. That's awesome. And so are they saying something, or how do you know that you're appreciated? Sorry.
I've had other teammates mention in team meetings that I asked, or that it came from something that was mentioned by me.
Great.
So it's subtle, but I
Great.
Feels good.
So if we believe in this pay it forward model, does anyone else have one? Yeah, sure.
I actually find that appreciation radiates back. Why is this like echoing?
Oh, it might be because I'm...
Are we too close? So I feel appreciated because I really appreciate my team and the people I work with. And I really appreciate, like I love them. They're really great. And I think that radiates out, and they really appreciate me. They're just, they have little gestures and things, and I think it just begets. So I don't think you can walk around in the world and not appreciate people, and people are like, oh, you're so wonderful. It's kind of, yeah. It's kind of like that paying forward. So
Nice. The last slide I wanted to get to was a coaching format. So this is one way that you can share your ideas or hear someone else's ideas back by asking them kind of what's on your mind, what are you trying to get from this conversation, what are your biggest challenges, and there are questions instead of telling them what you really want them to know or leading them to something. What have you already done? This is from a book called The Coaching Habit, which I'll also show in just a second. And then, what's a good first experiment? It doesn't have to be the right thing to do, but what could you in your situation try? And then asking what has been valuable for you in the conversation that we've had. There's a lot more to it, but we're just touching on that one here. So this is the actual book that comes from, The Coaching Habit, which actually I just did this class. Not that I haven't already read the book, but I did this class in Seattle this morning and drove all the way down here just to see you guys, because you're so important. So the first chapter is not about coaching, it's about changing a habit. And that's why I felt it was really relevant enough to add today. So the bottom on here is, how can I change my habits? What can I do differently to make myself a thought leader, to see myself as a thought leader? Because I have good ideas that could be valuable to someone else if I share them in a way that's welcoming to them as well. If I share them in a way that helps them also become a thought leader, we both win. So if you can intentionally think of what habit you want to change, when you're most likely to do the wrong thing, and how you can recognize those triggers, what's one tiny thing you can do differently, and where can you practice, it's not that hard to move the needle. And that's all. Thank you.